Good afternoon, Africa. Good afternoon, African Confessions. I am back with another episode. There is a message that I want to share with you guys. The message that I am going to be sharing with you comes from a translation of a confession that I received. The message reads like this. Hello, how are you, my brother? Can you please post for me as anonymous? My brother, for me to be alive today, it is by the grace of God. When I saw that I could not find any job opportunities in my own country from where I come from, I had to migrate into another country. When I arrived into that country, then I started looking for a job. Lucky enough, I finally got a job and I was working as a shop attendant, and we were mainly selling fizzy drinks, and we used to sell these drinks in bulk, mostly to people who had smaller shops. Those were the people that would come to stock up at our shop. I worked for a little while in that shop. Then one day I was sitting in the shop. We were just lazing around because on that day the shop was not so busy. As I was sitting there, I felt that there was something that had bitten me. I was bitten on my right leg. When I felt that something had bit me on my leg, I looked and I saw that it was just an ant. In anger, I then hit the ant, I squashed it and I threw it away. But to my surprise, the other ants then formed a line and they ran away. What these ants did truly surprised me. I've never seen ants behave in such a way, because after they'd seen that I had squashed that ant that had bitten me, they ran and they hid under a crate of Kingsley drinks. After that, they came out of that crate and they came to the place where I had squashed the ant earlier on. When I looked, I saw that same ant that I had squashed and I had made sure that I had killed it. That same ant had came back to life. The whole scenario just puzzled me, but I just brushed it off. So from the place where I come from, they say that if you see that kind of an ant, it means that you are in for bad luck. But at that time, I just brushed it off. When it was time for me to knock off, I knocked off from work. Then I got to the taxi rank. Whilst I was in the taxi, I felt that that same place where that ant had bitten me, that spot was so itchy. I tried to scratch myself, but it was like the more that I scratched myself, the more I was spreading poison all over my body. Finally, I arrived at home. Then I told my wife that at work there was an ant that had bitten me. When she said, "Come, let me see the place where that ant has bitten you," the whole place was already swollen. Then she said to me, "Maybe you didn't look properly. Maybe it was not an ant, it was a scorpion." At first, I tried to be brave, thinking that maybe the pain would go away. I tried to act like a man, but finally, I told my wife that I can't take it anymore. I think I have to go to the clinic. What I had in mind is that I was going to go to the local clinic. If only I can get to the hiking spot, I could find transport that was going to take me to the local clinic. When I told my wife that I wanted to go to the clinic, she said, "I am not going to let you go alone. I am going to accompany you because I want to know what is going on with you." So I said it is okay. But later on, I told her, "We can't go to the clinic together. Please let me go alone. What if we get robbed? What are we going to do? So you stay behind. At least give me one of these cheap phones. Even if they rob me, at least it will be a cheap phone." So I went to the hiking spot alone. But as I was walking to the hiking spot, I was surprised that I saw my boss's car. I was surprised what was my boss doing in the location that I was staying, because I knew that he was staying in the estates. So I thought that maybe he had a girlfriend that stayed in the locations. But as I approached his car, because at the same time I was happy that my boss was going to help me. And in this situation that I was in, I desperately needed help. But as soon as I had approached his car, my boss then got out of the car and he asked me, "Where are you going?" I told him what had happened and I told him that I wanted to go to the clinic. Then he said to me, "If you go to the clinic, clinic now. They are not going to assist you, but get into the car. I am going to take you to the provincial hospital. So I said, yes, please take me to the hospital. In that situation that I was in, I could not say no. All that I wanted was to get to the hospital so that the nurses can help me. I got into the car and I didn't even bother to check where the boss was driving me to. All that I wanted was help at that time. As my boss was busy driving, he then did something that truly shocked me. My boss was a non-smoker, but he pulled out a cigarette, then he started to smoke. And I still remembered that the first thing that my boss asked me when I was looking for a job at his shop, he asked me if I was a smoker or a non-smoker, and I had told him that no, I don't smoke, boss. And my boss said that congratulations, you have gotten the job. He never wanted any of his employees to smoke, mostly on his premises. But here he was smoking while he was driving. I just thought that there were double standards. As he was smoking, I noticed that the cigarette that he was smoking, it had a very strange flavor that I had never encountered before. Yes, I am a non-smoker, but I know what tobacco smells like. And as he was smoking his cigarette, I quickly realized that it had a strange smell to it, and the flavor that cigarette had, I've never encountered that kind of a flavor before. So he kept on smoking his cigarette. Then finally he passed on the cigarette to me and he said, "Here, take a smoke." I don't know why I decided to start smoking on that day, but I just accepted that cigarette. Then I started to smoke. I only inhaled once, then I went blank. The next thing that happened is that I just woke up and my boss had parked his car in front of his house. I quickly realized that this was my boss's house. He was waiting for the garage doors to open up. Finally, the garage doors opened up and I noticed that the woman that walked out of the house, it was my boss's wife. She walked to the car, then she started to speak with my boss. But as they were speaking, that is when I realized that there was something strange that was going on. It was like the whole world, the volume had been lowered down. I could see everything, but I could not hear anything. Like if you play a video and you lower the volume, and everywhere there was smoke. Wherever I would look, there was smoke everywhere. After my boss and his wife had finished talking, my boss's wife rushed into the house. It was like she was such in a hurry. She rushed into the house. When she came back, I noticed that she had a very big bag, and the way that she was carrying that bag, it was like it was so heavy for her. When my boss saw that his wife could not load the bag alone into the car, he then got out of the car so that he can assist his wife. After they had finished loading up the bag into the boot of the car, my boss and his wife got back into the car. Then my boss started to drive the car. But the place where we went, it was not very far. We were still in the same estate. When we got to the second house, I saw that the garage doors were already open. So my boss just drove straight into that garage. Then they closed the garage doors. They got me out of the car and I saw that there were people who were already waiting for my boss and his wife. What these people did to me is that they removed me from the car, then they threw me onto the garage floor, then they left me in the garage alone. When they had gotten into the house, I noticed that there were a lot of creatures, scary creatures in that garage. Some of them were crawling towards me. Finally, my boss and other men, they came back into that garage. But the way that they were dressed up like people who wanted to perform a ritual ceremony. But when they came back, my boss's wife and other women were not there. It was my boss and other men. The clothes that they were wearing, I've never seen such a color. It was red in color, but not the kind of red that we know. That color red kept on changing from red to red. I don't know if you are ever going to understand me. They kept on performing their rituals on me. Then my boss walked over to that leg where that ant had bitten me earlier on. Then he bit me. The way that my boss was biting me, it was like he wanted to suck something out of my body. Then suddenly I saw that these men were finally scared, like there was something that had entered into that garage. Then they all ran away. everything went blank. The next thing that I remember is that I was walking around in another location. When I asked around and when I looked around, I realized that I was in another location, and the place that I had woken up in, for me to go back to the location where I was staying, I had to get 2 taxis. One taxi to go to town, then another taxi to go into another location. So this surprised me how I had gotten into this location. So I kept on walking around. As I was walking around, I saw these other women. Then I approached them. I asked them for help, like if there was anyone who could help me with airtime, if there was anyone who had airtime on their phones. One of them agreed and she let me use her phone. I didn't tell them what had happened to me. So I called my wife. My wife came, then she picked me up. We went back home. I told her everything that had happened to me throughout the night. My wife was so shocked about the whole incident. When we arrived back to the location where I was staying at that time, I took my phone, I opened my WhatsApp because I wanted to tell my boss, I wanted to give him an explanation why I could not come to work. But what surprised me is that when I opened my boss's chat on WhatsApp, I saw that he had already sent me a very long message and it had a lot of threats. So I called my boss. I wanted to understand if he had fired me or not, and if he had fired me, was he going to give me the money that he was still owing me? As I was speaking with my boss, I realized that my boss was very angry with me. I kept on arguing with him on the phone. Then he said to me, "Don't act like I don't know where you are staying, because I can come over there and I can shoot you, and there is nothing that anyone can do about it." I told my wife everything that my boss had told me. My wife then said, "We have to find another accommodation." Now, my brother, the reason why I have contacted you is that there is a secret that I am keeping from my wife. I am afraid and I don't know how should I tell my wife. There are things that are still happening in my life ever since that incident happened, because now we are staying somewhere new. But still, there are days where I see my boss. Sometimes I can see my boss in our room, but it will be in the middle of the night. Sometimes I can just wake up and I will see that there will be someone that will be closing the door. But before that person closes the door, you will look back into the room. Then I will see that it is my boss. Sometimes I can just wake up maybe in the middle of the night and I will not be in bed. I will be sitting on a chair and I can't even explain how I would have gotten out of bed. All of these things that are happening to me, I have been keeping it as a secret from my wife. I am afraid that if I tell her everything that is going on, she is going to be very afraid because she is scared of these spiritual things. My brother, this is the situation that I am facing right now. Dear listeners, right there was a message that I received from Anonymous. Then I asked one of our admins to give us a translation, hoping that you were able to understand this confession. I'll be back with another episode.